Okay, so if you, like I think pretty much everyone, have ever found yourself just staring at a shelf full of supplements or maybe trying to read a cosmetic label and just feeling completely overwhelmed, like, is this actually good stuff or is it just, clever marketing? It's really confusing out there.
It absolutely is. And that's why the sources you sent over about this entity, Ingredientsage or at Ingredientsage online, are so fascinating.
Right.
We're going to do a deep dive today to try and figure out what they're all about because they seem to cut through that noise. But, and this is the interesting part, they're not just commentators, they're actually in the industry.
Yeah, that's what grabbed me immediately. They stated right up front they are a manufacturer, full stop, cosmetics, supplements. But then they add this crucial bit, not a health guru.
Exactly. It's this mix, isn't it? They've got the insider knowledge because they make this stuff, but they're using it to talk directly to consumers, trying to be transparent.
It's a pretty unique position. They want to help you make better choices, basically, with trusted info.
Think about it. They probably know exactly where the corners get cut because they know how not to cut them, presumably. They know what goes into a quality product versus, well, junk.
So this transparency, it's almost like their business model, built on earning that trust.
Precisely. They're aiming to empower you, the listener, to make more informed decisions.
Okay, let's dig into that public-facing side first.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that really catches your eye. The myth-busting, the scam alerts, they get pretty specific.
They really do. They're not vague about it. We
Yeah.
saw warnings about major issues in supply chains. Like, they flat out say the Manuka honey scam is real.
And that's a big deal, right? Manuka honey is expensive.
Exactly. High value, high margin. So it's ripe for fraud, fake stuff, diluted stuff. They're calling it out.
And it gets even more specific, like things you might literally have bought last week. They warned about fake Jamaican black castor oil turning up in places like Ross.
Yeah, Ross, which is kind of wild.
And they even raised questions about Costco olive oil possibly being fake. I mean, that hits close to home for a lot of people.
It does. And that level of detail makes you think they have access to testing data or maybe just really deep knowledge of sourcing networks. They're not just guessing.
Right. They're pointing to documented risks.
And it's not just fakes. They talk about hidden dangers, like an unseen ingredient potentially lurking in B12 supplements.
Oh, okay.
Or asking why Norwegian fish oil might be dangerous. They're pushing people to look beyond just the main ingredient on the label.
Okay, my absolute favorite example, the one that just perfectly shows their insider view, was about something super basic. Table salt.
Salt. What about salt?
They posted about something hiding in table salt. And they identified it in some brands as hidden sugar, specifically dextrose.
Sugar in salt. Why?
Apparently used sometimes for anti-caking or maybe processing. But who on earth checks their salt for sugar? Nobody.
Nobody. Not until someone who knows tells you, hey, maybe look.
Exactly. It's those little details that show they know the bigger picture.
And it's not all just warnings, right? They also give practical advice.
Yeah, like shopping guides. They mentioned one for Costco fish oil. And they do direct comparisons, like, is the TJ Maxx magnesium oil worth it compared to a fancy brand?
Or how to judge that Manuka honey you saw at Home Goods. It's genuinely useful guidance.
But, okay, let's address the elephant in the room. Why is a manufacturer spending all this time pointing out the flaws in their own industry? Doesn't that seem counterproductive?
But that's where it gets clever, I think. By calling out the bad actors, the low-quality stuff.
Yeah.
Ingredientsage is basically sending a signal to potential clients. We're not like them. We care about quality. They're setting a higher bar.
So the education attracts brands that want that quality and transparency.
Exactly. Transparency becomes their biggest selling point. They're saying, look, the industry has problems. Work with us. We do it right.
That makes a lot of sense. They position themselves as the ethical choice. Okay, so let's pivot now to the second part of their content, the actual ingredient education. This is where their technical chops really show.
Right. Moving from the scam alerts to the science behind the formulations.
Like ascorbic acid, vitamin C.
Yeah, they define it correctly.
Yeah.
Powerful antioxidant, vital for skin, immune system, collagen. But where they go deeper, from a formulator's perspective, is the stability issue.
Stability. Why is that the big problem?
Because ascorbic acid is notoriously unstable. It breaks down really fast when it's exposed to light, heat, air. It oxidizes.
Oh, okay.
So if your manufacturer isn't using the right delivery system or packaging to protect it, that expensive vitamin C serum you bought, it might lose its punch pretty quickly.
So it's not just what it is, but how it's delivered and kept effective.
Precisely. That's the kind of insight you get.
Gotcha. They also talked about collagen, which is, I mean, it's everywhere now, types I, 2, and 3.
Yes, and they explain the basics. Type I mostly for skin, hair, nails. Type 2 more for joints. But the really useful bit, I thought, was how they cut through the jargon.
You mean the collagen peptides versus hydrolyzed collagen thing?
Exactly. The industry uses both terms, and it can be confusing. Ingredientsage just says, look, they're basically the same category.
Okay, so what are they then?
They're both collagen protein that's been broken down, hydrolyzed, using enzymes into smaller bits, peptides, so your body can actually absorb them better.
Ah, so hydrolyzed is the process to make the peptides.
Right. Raw collagen molecules are too big. Good manufacturers hydrolyze it to make it bioavailable. That's the key takeaway beyond just the name.
Makes sense. They also covered magnesium, mentioning magnesium sulfate, which most of us know as Epsom salt.
Yeah, magnesium, sulfur, oxygen. And they point out its use is great for soaking sore muscles, baths, inflammation, even gardening.
But then they also give advice on magnesium powder versus tablets. That seems different.
It is, because that's about internal use. For sucking, sulfate is fine. But if you're taking magnesium for, say, a deficiency, you often need a different form, like a chelated one, for better absorption. Sulfate isn't usually the best for taking orally, so the form powder, tablet, capsule, and which kind of magnesium matters a lot.
So context is everything. Topical versus internal needs different forms.
Totally. And they cover natural stuff, too, like xylitol.
The sugar substitute.
Yeah, a sugar alcohol. Good for formulating because it's lower calorie, doesn't spike blood sugar like regular sugar. Useful in certain products.
And wild yam.
Right, a plant used in herbal medicine. They mention its connection to hormone balance, especially for menopause, because it contains something called diostronin.
Okay.
So it shows their knowledge isn't just the big vitamins, it's botanicals, specialized compounds too. They seem equipped for diverse product needs.
Which brings us neatly back to their main business, the reason they have all this deep knowledge. It's not academic.
No, it's operational.
Ingredientsage isn't just talking the talk. They're walking the walk as a manufacturer of supplements and cosmetics. Based in Clearwater, Florida, apparently.
Yep. And the business model is private label manufacturing. Let's break that down quickly for listeners.
Good idea.
It basically means Ingredientsage makes the products, the pills, the creams, whatever, but then those products get sold under their client's brand name.
So they could be making products you see on the shelf right now, but under a different label.
Absolutely. They're the engine behind the scenes for other brands.
Okay, so what does that engine actually do? The sources laid out a pretty complete process.
It's end-to-end. Starts with product development, figuring out the formulation.
Right, using all that ingredient knowledge we just talked about.
Exactly. Then actually sourcing and procuring those raw materials, which, as we saw with the scams, is critical.
Yeah, definitely.
Then the manufacturing itself, blending ingredients, filling capsules or bottles, making sure it's all done correctly. And finally, arguably the most important step, quality control and testing.
Okay, quality control. They mentioned some key terms here, FDA registered and GMP certified facilities. Let's unpack GMP.
GMP stands for Good Manufacturing Practice, and it's huge. It's a set of regulations and standards that ensures products are consistently produced and controlled.
So it's about consistency and safety.
Yes. It minimizes risks like contamination and helps guarantee that what's on the label is actually what's in the bottle at the strength it claims. Seeing GMP certification is a really good sign.
A baseline standard, really.
Absolutely. And they go further, mentioning third-party testing.
Right, using ISO-certified labs. What does ISO add?
ISO is the International Organization for Standardization. Certifying the labs ensures that the testing itself is reliable and follows standardized, recognized methods.
Okay, so GMP is about the manufacturing process. ISO is about the testing verification.
You got it. And those labs test for key things. Identity, is it really vitamin C? Potency, is it the right amount? Purity, any contaminants? And safety. It's like a quality checklist verified by outsiders.
That sounds pretty thorough. So for a brand that wants to hire Ingredientsage, how does it actually work? The sources mention two main paths.
Right. There's a fast track and a more custom route. The
Yeah.
fast one is using their stock formulas.
Stock formulas, like off-the-shelf recipes.
Pretty much pre-developed, pre-tested formulations. The advantage is speed. You can get your product made and ready to sell in maybe 4 to 6 weeks.
Wow, that's quick.
And crucially, they usually have lower minimum order quantities, MOQs.
MOQ, minimum order quantity.
Correct. The smallest batch size they'll produce. For stock formulas, it might start around, say, 1,000 units. That makes it easier for smaller or newer brands to get started without a huge upfront investment.
Okay, so stock formulas are fast and accessible. What's the other path?
That's custom formulations. This is if a brand wants something totally unique, built from the ground up to their specific vision.
Like a secret sauce recipe.
Exactly. But that takes more time. You're looking at maybe 8 to 12 weeks, sometimes longer because there's research and development involved, maybe sourcing unique ingredients, new testing protocols.
So more unique, but slower, and probably a bigger commitment.
That's the trade-off. Speed and lower MOQs with stock versus total customization with custom.
Okay, so stepping back, what we've really unpacked here is a pretty smart business model, isn't it?
I think so.
Ingredientsage takes its deep manufacturing knowledge, uses it to educate consumers about quality and scams.
Which builds trust.
Right. And that trust, plus the demonstrated expertise, attracts the exact kind of brands they likely want to work with, ones that value that transparency and high quality.
They're using their critique of the industry's weak spots to basically advertise their own strengths. They become the good guy by exposing the bad guys.
It really shows that insider knowledge doesn't have to stay hidden. They're decoding labels, comparing products, calling out issues.
And in doing that, they're actually helping to raise the bar for the whole market, making it harder for dodgy operators to get away with stuff.
Which brings us to our final thought, something for you, the listener, to take away from this deep dive.
Yeah.
If the people who are actually making these products, the ones who know how tricky it is to keep vitamin C stable, or how real the Manuka honey fraud is if they are warning about scams and shouting about quality standards.
Then what does that mean for us?
Exactly. What does that tell us about the standards we should be demanding every time we pick up a bottle or jar?
It tells us we need to be more critical consumers. Use the things Ingredientsage highlights about their process as your own checklist.
Don't just look at the flashy front label.
No. Flip it over. Look for real evidence of quality. Does it mention GMP certification? Does it say anything about third-party testing, maybe even ISO-certified labs? Demand that transparency.
Because informed skepticism seems like the best tool we have.
It's the only way to really know if you're getting genuine science or just, expensive hype. Check those labels.